That's my job. Okay, cool. As my friends from Ai4Cloud are plugging themselves in here, I can get your straight HDMI connection here.
Thanks,
I'm
sir.
going to do a couple event shout-outs. I don't know if I think I got all my sponsors and whatnot. So we have a couple events going on. The biggest thing we have is actually in DC. Once a year, we basically run a 2-day startup boot camp. It's basically, what it's for is for folks who are either, actually, let me ask a question. How many of you are here are startups? Okay, a bunch. How many of you are entrepreneurs? So like thinking about starting something. Okay, cool. A couple, there's a few. Okay, so this is for you guys. So what usually happens in startup land is either you want to start something, but you haven't yet started it, or you started something and you've kind of gotten it to a certain point and you're kind of stuck. So last year we did this for the first time. We do a 2-day startup boot camp, if you will, to basically give you a kick in the ass and get you moving. And we have a three-track program. The first one's called Launch, where we will actually help you launch. How do we do that? We have lawyers there who will incorporate you. If you're not incorporated, create your operating agreement, create your employee agreement, create your partnership agreements. All the stuff that you just need. Your accountants, set up your books, do your book ledger, like all the stuff that like for some reason nobody teaches you. Everybody's talking about minimum viable product and customer acquisition. That's great, but if you don't have a company, you can't go very far. So it's all that stuff, just all the nuts and bolts of getting it started, and then like, okay, well here's how normal companies do their QuickBooks, and like, you know, here's how a normal operating agreement goes, and what happens if your business partner dies or gets divorced or like flees the country, and now all of a sudden you have a problem. You know, that's all the stuff you cover in your operating agreement. If you haven't done that, if it's giving you some pause right now for thought, you may want to think about your operating agreement. All that sort of stuff, even insurance, it's like all the stuff you need, and regulatory stuff. That's the launch track. The next track is called the growth track. How do you sell? How do you market? How do you partner with people? How do you, all of the nuts and bolts of that. Like we will have, so we have like awesome resources. We'll have the folks from Google there, from Facebook there. We're going to have our a software development team, basically. How do you build an MVP in mobile? We'll have some we have lawyers, we have accountants, we have insurance folks. And then the third track, which I'm sure is probably the most important, is called the funds track. You can spend 2 whole days pitching investors all day, every day, if that's what you want to do. And because this is in DC, we're basically pulling investors from Boston, New York, DC, and the East Coast region. There's a lot of money there. And if you go to startupspectacular.com, you'll actually see all the investors listed, and they're pretty amazing. It's Revolution, it's NEA, it's TDF, it's Updata, it's Bain Capital, it's Barrett Capital, it's all those folks. And it's grouped into tracks. So basically what happens is you have 3 or 4 investors who will sit with you in a session for an hour. Basically you spend time asking them questions, and then you can talk to them, and then afterwards you just talk to them. You know, they're aware that you're early stage. It's not much of a surprise. So we have a bunch of investors there. We're also going to have sort of called non-equity sources of funding, banks and crowdfunding and grants even. Because we're in DC, you may or may not be aware of this, there's also government sources of money, there's SBIR grants, there's all sorts of stuff like that, so you learn about that. And then we have these like palette refreshers, so we all come together to the main auditorium to learn from successful entrepreneurs. We have 4 awesome folks who are going to basically do lessons learned with you. The reason why we're calling it lessons learned is because they're not always successful. We have Seth Goldman, founder of Honest Tea. If you know him, he's Honest Tea, built it to $1 billion brand, just sold it to Coca-Cola not too long ago, and now he's starting a new thing called Beyond Meat, which is like the vegetarian meat thing, kind of interesting. It bleeds like meat. Yeah. Then we also can have Jenny Lawton, who is CEO of MakerBot, so she's going to be there. It's awesome. We're going to have Lou Brown Jr., who's a founder of Micros. You may be familiar with Micros, $1 billion software company on the payment services thing. And we just signed Greg Cangelosi, Blue Sky Factory. This is going to be at Georgetown University, Washington, D.C. I know it's not here in Austin, but it's worth the trek. It's basically summer camp. It's going to be July 25th, 26th, bless you. We're going to have lots of food. And we're going to have an evening party. So it's going to be a lot of fun. The early registration period is still on. Every year we've done it. This is the second year we've done it. It's sold out. So I really encourage you to join us. You'll also meet a lot of your peers, which is the big part of it, because a lot of people like you in like the same place that you are, who are struggling with very much the same problems that you're struggling with. And part of it is just meeting other people from across the country. It's like, you may think that, you know, New York or Boston or LA or San Francisco or wherever has got it, you know, everybody's got this grass is green on the other side, but it's like, everybody's kind of pretty much in the same place. So meet your peers, connect with them, Check it out, startupspectacular.com. Early registration is still going on. And that's all I got for you.
I'm here with my hat of Honorary Consul of France for Austin, and I want everyone, we're going to post the event soon, I hope. France is offering a 1-week all-expense-paid trip to a winning small company under 2 million revenue, under 30 employees for 1 week in France to explore that ecosystem, to look at your European strategy. Paris and France, great, R&D credits, amazing. So 1 week, all-expense-paid. I'll put something out soon about, we'd love to get a lot of folks to apply for that. And Austin has a sister city in Angers, France. Anyone in IoT, I'm going to start promoting this more. The World Electronics Forum, the largest gathering of the heads of the electronics company giants of the world, will be in our sister city, France. And it'll all be in English. And I'm getting a delegation together for IoT companies to go over there from Austin.
All right. Can't say no to that. The URL? Is there a URL for that?
Next month we're doing IoT.
Is there a URL for that?
Soon, I'll post that.
All right, cool. Well, cool, politician. I'll put to the meetup. Okay, cool. I know we're sort of cranking here. So my friends from Ai4Cloud, I think I lost my there. Oh, here it is right now. You're up.
Oh, thank you, sir. Good morning, folks. My name's Dennis Redwine. My brother and I started a business called Ai4Cloud. We're basically doing enterprise-class infrastructure monitoring provided as a service. So one of the big challenges for mid-market enterprises and large enterprises is enterprise infrastructure monitoring tools are a very difficult domain to manage. So a company or a business is usually, whether they're a hospital or a manufacturer like Dell, IT technology company, they still have infrastructure. And that infrastructure is oftentimes far-flung, lots of devices, and it's difficult for companies that have hundreds or thousands of IT employees to properly collaborate in real time to understand how infrastructure problems are affecting the business. And that's the problem we solve. It's just a demo today. We're not going to do much. We're not going to do any talking about sort of the business or financials or any other piece. It's just a demo of the technology to help you understand what it is that we do. So in terms of artificial intelligence, I'm sure it's a big buzzword. People have heard a lot about it. It's, I think, primarily because of IBM's Watson, Google, Siri, some of these artificial intelligence tools that are designed for the consumer. Well, this is an artificial intelligence product that's designed actually for large businesses at scale. So it was originally designed for the space program, NASA space program. That technology was leveraged for the Iridium satellite project. From there, that funding and that project led to deployment in large infrastructures like AT&T's network or Citigroup's financial infrastructure. And so what we're doing is we're bringing that advanced technology that's continued to grow and develop to meet requirements of OpenStack and the other and converged infrastructures and other new technologies. We're bringing that to the mid-market. So providing the same class of artificial intelligence around infrastructure monitoring, but we're doing it for the mid-market, to say the $5 to $500 million range. Back to my story. So that infrastructure is getting more and more complex. Where it looks like hyper-converged infrastructures are reducing complexity, it's actually not the case, because that just becomes another layer over which those virtual technologies that are the same sort of unitary computing system abstract constructs are still in this new world. So businesses have more of a problem with today's converged infrastructure than less. So the way that companies traditionally manage that environment and the way they still do it today is they have subject matter experts in various domains of that infrastructure to manage that, to manage those environments. So you'll have a storage administrator that manages the storage environment. You'll have a network administrator that's responsible for all the transport and the networking. You might have a virtual networking administrator that's just responsible for the VNX or the VMware virtual networking infrastructure. And then layered over the top of that, you'll have a compute layer. It could be a team of individuals, whether it's Microsoft's virtualization or Red Hat or VMware's virtualization. Oftentimes that's a team of individuals. And then at the application layer, you have the same thing over again, whether it's Oracle applications or Microsoft Exchange or SAP. Each one of those application owners own a piece of the pie in terms of understanding how they affect the business, but no one person in that subject matter expertise scenario really understands how they're delivering to the business. So what happens is when you have conditions in the infrastructure that cause either business risk or performance or availability problems in the business services, all of these subject matter experts have to get together collectively to understand how the conditions in the infrastructure are affecting the business, who's the victim, and who's the perpetrator. But at the end of the day, the CIO or the information director, he really wants to understand how his team is driving the infrastructure and these processes to deliver business value. So that's the problem that we solve. We tie this all together into a single seamless causality model to understand how those infrastructure elements are affecting the business. And then we notify the individual stakeholders in real time when those problems occur to tell you exactly where the problem is and where the symptoms are. The way we do it is we just construct a tunnel into the customer's infrastructure. We use industry standard protocols, SNMP, WMI, VMware APIs, etc. To discover that infrastructure. We bring that data into our infrastructure. We do the processing for that information, and then we deliver back to the customer in real time the charts, graphs, notifications, and emails that they need to run the business.
So you have about 1 minute for a demo.
All right, great. So we provide a lot of really great dashboards in terms of top-end devices, in terms of who's causing problems, top notification by the number of impacted elements in the underlying infrastructure, chronic problems analysis, won and violated SLAs, deep metrics as well. So once you find where a problem is, you really need a lot of granularity in terms of understanding that problem, provide that sort of those metrics as well in whether it's disk, CPU, application, connectivity, performance, and metrics. And then you can build charts and graphs and reports of your own with easy drag and drop tools. Yeah, now I put together this Camtasia. This is the actual application. Now this is, the reason I did this was, this is the traditional real-time tool. What we were looking at before was the reporting engine that's fed by the artificial intelligence engine. This gives you a better understanding of what in real time is going on in this artificial intelligence engine. Say I'm just a regular IT infrastructure administrator, and this is my console. I see my impacted customers, my business processes, issues that I'm working on, current events in the infrastructure, and then items that might be placed in maintenance. So what I'm going to do is...
I'm going to be your mic stand.
Great. Oh, thank you. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to place this AWS Cisco 1000V in maintenance. I'm doing some BGP work on it. So now I've accepted ownership of it. It's an issue that I'm working on. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to schedule maintenance on that object, so that what it'll do is it'll then show up in the maintenance window, and all the alerts that everybody else is seeing in terms of all current events, if they're looking for network events in this particular type case, is they're going to no longer see that AWS router in all current events. It's moved into the maintenance window, and all the associated events that are going on with the problems that I'm having with that router while I'm working on it are down here in that window as well, because the artificial intelligence engine understood all those events and how they map to that original router. So now I'm going to show you a couple of map views. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to simulate a failure of the underlying network condition, and we're going to see how the artificial intelligence engine understands the VMs, the applications, the service offerings that are impacted by that particular problem. So I'm going to do a shut on a BGP tunnel between the Dallas location and the Austin location. You'll see I've got some alerts on this particular router, but because I've done a shut on that interface, you're going to see now I have another condition. If I look at that, you're going to see that I have a link down on that router. Now, that artificial intelligence engine runs every 30 seconds, and every 30 seconds it looks at that series of events of that infrastructure and says, what is the root cause? What is the root cause of this problem? Right? So it's running every 30 seconds, and it's beginning to see that it can't reach the AT&T router, it's having problems getting to the access point, and you'll see that it's beginning to take those indications, put them in the summary views, deliver them to people via emails or into those reports, and rolling those events into the console. Now it's going to continue to do that. Now the other thing that's great is where you normally have red, yellow, green, and are trying to make sense of an event based on the color. That's not what the business really cares about. What the business cares about is how many things are impacted, or how important is that red event over any other red event? Because the artificial intelligence engine understands the causality between all the objects. It knows the objects that are affected, and it increases the count for every object that is affected by that subtending element. So here we see the network events as well as the business department advice and planning tools is affected because the service offering that runs the voice over IP service that's on the call manager on that router is not available. So here you see the router event and all of the various pieces of infrastructure that are affected by that. The application owner can see, yeah, I have an unresponsive application, but why? Oh, it's a router problem. It's not a problem for me to solve. Now he's informed he can take a different type of action besides trying to maybe restart his application. The same thing would be true for, say, a database owner. So here's an application MySQL, it's unresponsive, he sees the same thing. Well, that's because it's a router problem. Same thing for the line of business owner. He can say, why is my line of business impacted? Oh, it's because I have a router issue that's affecting my phones and that's affecting phone registration. We've got about 2 more minutes.
Yeah, that's good. That's fine.
So
If I
the
answer
voice
all
over
the questions, right?
the voice over IP administrator is looking. He can see, okay, he's got a problem with the phone group, and that's affecting a service offering delivered to his business. And he can see again, he's got registration exceptions. Okay, I have basically 3 IP phones that are no longer available because of that BGP problem on that router that affected that endpoint. Right. And then I just want to show you one more view here as it comes up. So, and so on and so forth. So each individual in their silo gets an understanding of how they've been impacted in real time when the problem occurs, but it also separates the bullies from the victims immediately in real time. Right? And as soon as I close this, I want to show you just another view. So now what I'm going to do is,
You took ownership.
yeah, I'm going to take ownership of that event now. It's an issue I'm working on, right? And we're just going to briefly walk through the types of things that I'm tracking on that particular device. It's interfaces, it's network adapters, it's cards, it's processors. So we're tracking all that availability and performance information about all the various bits and pieces of DNA that make up that particular device. And it's true for every VM, every ESX box, network, storage device, etc. So here you see the impact for that problem is 27, which is a list of all of those elements that were affected by this problem. So now that I'm working on it, I'm going to use one of our operations tools to go in there and SSH back to that device and change that shut on the interface. Now how did I know that? Because right here it says the interface on the files router was disabled. It has the same impact. That's why the other router is down. I can't tell that to something that's down, but I can tell that to something that's caused that problem, which is identified here. Bring that interface back up, and then at the next polling cycle, you'll see that that event will clear. Now, the business owner cares not about all of those underlying infrastructure elements. What he cares about is how are my customers doing, and how are my service supporting those customers doing. And he's got a real-time view into all the services that he provides to his customers with roll-ups. And he can see, oh, planning and advice has a problem. What's the problem? I have a service offering impacted, which is that IP phone group, and again, it's caused because of a router problem. Now, what he can then say is, he said, well, who's working on that? Well, he can see that I'm the owner. If he wants to look at that notification, he could double-click on it and see that I'm the owner. Now we see that all of those application processes are cleared, and the event is cleared as well, because I brought the interface back up. So I add a note to the audit log that tracks with that particular notification. If I look at that audit log in detail, you'll see all of the situations for that particular condition that occurred in that infrastructure. So you can track who did what and what happened at what time.
All right,
That's
good
it.
job. Good job in the demo. All right, remember, this is really cool. So let me ask you. So basically, the problem you're solving is that there's a lot of obviously interconnected pieces. Networks are very complicated. There's app servers. There's stuff that's internal. There's stuff that's external. There's stuff on the cloud. There's hardware. There's software. Blah blah blah. And really, the problem you're solving is trying to find root cause analysis for the problems that are happening. So let me ask you, because there's obviously a lot of people who have been trying to solve that problem in a lot of different ways. But your angle is you're adding this artificial intelligence piece. So let me ask you a little bit about the AI.
Great.
So obviously when I think about AI, I think about machine learning. So is it that what is the artificial intelligence? Is it like learning about your network? Is it a learning about the typical patterns of what happens in an organization? Like, oh, this is not normal?
Great question, yeah. So it's based on a semantics model, and semantics is the discipline of meaning. So the model, it's a SIM-based or a Corba-like language, basically an object-oriented language, where each one of the objects has the semantics built in for the behavior of that element, the problems and symptoms that it have. Well, the breakthrough is not a semantics model that describes those elements. It's being able to convert those semantics or those bits of meaning into something the computer can understand. So we embed, say, in a port object, the idea that it can be up, down, flapping, degraded, have a performance problem. Those are the constrained conditions that we analyze for that particular element. And then that element supports other things. It might support VLANs, it might support IP addresses, it might be connected to a host, and those connected via relationships, and all of those types of relationships that have causal behaviors to their neighbors are embedded in the model. And the breakthrough, the pioneering breakthrough, it was to be able to convert that model to a series of distance vector-based signatures. So it basically pre-analyzes before it ever starts pinging and polling and builds a playbook of all the various types of scenarios that could be in that unique infrastructure. And it does it every time it does a rediscovery. And then it's ready to distribute that information to the either hundreds or potentially thousands of IT administrators and technologists that need to have bits and pieces of that information in large environments. Did that answer the question?
Yes.
So what, if I'm an organization, right, say I've got hundreds of thousands, routers, switches, doesn't matter, infrastructure.
So you're like a Verizon.
I'm a Citigroup, I'm a Verizon, yeah. What's a rollout strategy for this software? Because, like,
That's a great question.
well,
That's good,
you
right
all
there.
understand, right?
Go ahead.
Because people already have this monitoring solution, right? Like, why am I gonna decide to like go out and retrofit all of my servers, routers, switches, like risk downtime to like to replace what I'm currently doing? Because from my perspective, right, like
Yeah.
the UI looks the same as what's currently being used in the enterprise.
True.
Maybe the web UI with like the business analytics, that's a lot different, but like what's making me want to do this?
Okay, great question. So if you remember back to the first slide where I said, you have all of these different people, the server administrator, the network administrator, the SAN administrator, and it's not just 5 guys. It could be 15, 50, 500 people, all with various pieces of the infrastructure, right? Well, all the other solutions out there will just give, each one of the guys has their own tools to look at their series of events. So you remember that war room where I showed all those people sitting around the table? Those are very expensive people, and that costs a lot of money. And the time and effort and labor that you do for common service affecting problems like that, day after day after day, eats into your ability to provide good quality, number one, but also for your ability to build new in that infrastructure.
One more thing I might add. It's an agentless technology. This is an agentless technology. All we need are credentials and API credentials. And when we open the tunnel, and you give us one seed router, we find from the CAM table and the ARP table, what its neighbors are. And then we get those neighbors, and then we ask those neighbors who their neighbors are. So we discover the entire infrastructure, unlike vRealize Operations or VMC Patrol, which requires a $500 agent. We're an agentless technology that, and we're the only tool in the world that does an artificial intelligence engine in the back end, which is cross-domain correlation.
That's interesting. Could be used for good, could be not used for good. I'm thinking to myself, it's like a tool that you can basically set loose in the enterprise and have it discover all the ports and all the interfaces and kind of like the relationships between the two and the vulnerabilities. It's kind of good. It could be a threat discovery.
You're leveraging existing technology that's built into like the whole routing and switching networks to be able to report back to you
Okay.
And that's back to your point, that's exactly how large organizations do it. Now the difference, the difference is that in Verizon, AT&T, and these other large infrastructures, they have this technology deployed in-house. Well, the problem is, if you look at the the expansion of the Internet of Things and IP addresses and virtualization sprawl that's leading mid-market customers into this type of problem where they have multiple domains of management that don't work well together because they don't have a correlation tool that works in real time to help them understand that.
I guess what's interesting is coming from a big organization, the risk factor from,
Cloud providers, right? So like 5 years ago, your cloud provider was like, oh, that's still like, we're not sure of that. Like, I don't know
Right.
if we're gonna be able to actually use cloud technology. Like, we're still unsure if we wanna use like virtualization. We know it's coming, but like, is it secure enough? Is it, you follow what I'm getting at, right? So
Yeah,
like,
absolutely.
I personally have built a 200,000 node cloud to manage 140 different customers using this.
Yeah, so
using this delivery model.
But back to security around the cloud. Security around the cloud is we're doing a stub for every user, a BGP tunnel and a stub for every user. So they can take their security and analytics tools and run it against their environment
Right.
all day long, and it's just as secure as Amazon Web Services.
Right, that's cool.
Okay, cool. So I think we have only time for one more question. I don't know if I saw it, but talking about Bill, are you going to ask him about their business model as an enterprise software sale? Because that's what I'm going to ask him. You want to answer that question?
Sure.
Okay, that'll be one. The other would be, what stage are you at?
Yeah, okay, good.
We're bootstrap. We're a
Are you
bootstrap
just
organization.
first customer?
Say again?
Customers,
Looking for
traction.
Looking for customers. Now, the technology is deployed in many locations, and we actually have affiliates that have the software deployed on-site in a traditional model. But we've started this cloud-based model so that we can solve the problem these big businesses have, which is they don't want to distribute 13 servers and a new
I get all the
application.
sales part. You know how you're gonna sell it.
And
Absolutely
and
we
the
do,
sales-
yeah.
Is it an enterprise sales model?
How you gonna price it?
Yeah, it's a per device pricing, it's a subscription model.
Okay, subscription per device. Okay, good. Well, there you guys go. Sorry I was inadvertently part of your demo. Just let you know Zach
Thank
didn't
you,
make it to
thank
school
you.
on time, so that's good to know. But good job in the demo. I let them run.
Thank you.
I don't want to let them come to their time.
Thank you.
Artificial intelligence, AI is where it's at, actually. So stay tuned on that. We actually have a couple of conferences of our own coming up on AI. So stay tuned for more information about that.